Welcome everyone to our Mandalorian preview. Mac and Eddie from SearchLight Pictures back with us again. Please make sure you watched Boba Fett before you watch the third season of Mando, because there's a big plot twist that happens. And spoiler alert, we have to mention it anyway. Grogu's back with Mando. He leaves Luke and Mando takes him over, as we see here. So, who wants to go first?
I mean, I think coming off of the back end of the book of Boba Fett, it's kind of refreshing to give Grogu that freedom of choice. He's not so much stuck in being a Jedi, even though he has the Force and he has these abilities. And obviously he's like one of the Yoda species, so he's very powerful. That's such a big, powerful character to have as a Jedi in the midst of all these Jedi disappearing and things like that. So it's really hard to explain that out. It's great that he would go be like a Mandalorian, except Dan isn't a Mandalorian either. So then I don't know. I still think he's a Mandalorian. I think he has been removed from that kind of the cultish version of Mandalorians, and he might start to feel more, maybe potentially feel more sympathy towards like the Bo-Katan version of Mandalorians that are mercenary styles, take their helmets off, they don't care about all the code and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting parallel between Grogu and even Ahsoka, if you think about it, because Ahsoka left the Jedi Order because she was, if you've seen the Clone Wars and everything, then Ahsoka left the Jedi Order because she obviously was wrongfully accused of something, but she felt like it just wasn't for her. But then Grogu also chose to not be a Jedi, but that doesn't mean that they won't be force wielding users, and maybe that doesn't mean Grogu may not get a lightsaber. It doesn't. A Jedi is an organization. It's a faith-based organization essentially. That doesn't mean you can't have any outsiders. And I think with Ahsoka, especially if you watch the shorts, like she's still very much powerful, very very powerful, but she's not a Jedi technically.
Right.
So Grogu can very, very much be in that conversation. And maybe this would be kind of a beginning of a sort of like this third option.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it won't be as organized as the Jedi Order or anything like that, but it'll be something for like, what, we want attachment, but that doesn't mean we're going to go to like hell and, and be evil. So
Yeah.
it's going to be an interesting sort of a thread to watch. And I think they both have interesting parallels in that regard.
The EU is riddled with organizations of Force users that aren't Jedi, but they're like off-casts of Jedi or like exiles who form their own sect, and they all effectively serve the light side, but they have different rules they go by or things like that. So I mean, this is very possible. I mean, the Knights of Ren were supposed to be kind of an offset of the Sith-ish in a way, except we don't know anything yet. So
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it's gonna be interesting.
My question is, I mean, obviously I didn't watch the trailer, and I always persist that people should not watch the trailer so that they get all the good feeling they will need when they watch something. But assuming we didn't watch the trailer, what does Mando want in season 3?
well, I mean, he was at the end of season 2 or the end of season of Boba Fett. He was told by the armorer that he was no longer a Mandalorian. And the only way to really get that redemption was to go bathe in the waters of Mandalore, the planet itself. But that place was war torn. Like Moff Gideon stripped that place bare of Beskar. You know what I'm saying? When he took over and got the Darksaber. So like, it's basically gonna have to go back to Mandalore, the actual homeworld, with his son, because that's his son now. I think we should go ahead and start referring to him as son. that's his boy. So I mean, I think that's going to be his major drawing point, that carrot on stick, if you would. It's like getting back and getting my honor back. But then obviously in the process, this is like a father-son story, right? So there's always going to be that I went out looking for this, but the real journey was the friends we made along the way, or something like that kind of event.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if in the process of going through all of this, stuff with trying to become Mandalorian again, I guess, is he'll find a little bit more about himself, maybe more about his background, and then even maybe more about Grogu's background.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here for like the Grogu's, Yoda species lore. Like, I want to know
all that.
And I'm very interested in because remember in the beginning and in Mandalorian, like we wanted to. They kept saying like, oh, you should be with your own kind, and I know that kind of like the sort of the overlay of that is like, oh, you should be with Jedi. But like, I want to know what's happening with Grogu. Like, what is
Yeah.
what is his desire? I mean, obviously he wants to be with uh oh my god,
Then
yes, thank you. And so that's one thing, but it's like what is after that? So it's going to be very interesting to see if he's going to continue to do use his force powers, which I'm sure he will, and then kind of morph into his own thing a little bit, trying into what I just said earlier. But I think with with him, I think he's gonna discover more about himself, if that makes any sense.
I actually have a crazy theory on Grogu. I think I'm gonna go ahead and drop it here since this is the best place to do it. So Grogu, as we know, is obviously one of Yoda's species. We know next to nothing about Yoda's species. We've only ever seen two other. I don't know if that's canon anymore. So never mind. We've only seen one other of his species, which is Yaddle, which also is now in the Tales of the Jedi series, which is incredible, by the way. You should definitely watch that. Definitely watch that. I think that Grogu might actually be a clone of Yoda. I think he might be a clone of Yoda that they made to harbor the spirit of Darth Sidious.
Oh man, that would. Ooh, that's a hot take.
So the person in. So I rewatched Mandalorian season 1, obviously, and 2. I remembered that when they picked up Grogu from the Imperial dude, he had a cloner patch on his shoulder. From Camino, the cloners, he had a cloner patch on his shoulder, and I was like, oh, and then I was like, wait, pre first order. Timeline matches up. Okay, so if that is the case, then if this is the case, and this is like they were like trying to clone him for the emperor. I think that this would also be the season of the Mandalorian and about the timeline where they start to really show us how the First Order amassed so much power, how Palpatine got all these Star Destroyers with saying planet killing weapons on them. I think this is about the timeline for that. So this is going to be an interesting ride.
God, you had to bring up Palpatine.
Sorry.
No.
I think they're going to, yeah.
I mean, the most famous lines ever uttered. Somehow Palpatine's returned.
They're about to, they're like, actually, we're going to show you how. We're going to give you
because
your most beloved character and one of the most hated lines from all of the fandom, and it's like, we're going to make you like it. We're going to
and that's here's that's gonna be very concerning, because now you're trying to like forcefully try to tie in threads, when honestly the better route is to keep Grogu a mystery. And honestly, that cloning thing could also be a misdirection. You just never know.
Absolutely, of course.
But which I hope it is, in my own biased opinion, because I feel like Grogu's story would be way more interesting if like there was, like something more tangible to him than just being a clone. I have to answer this call. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry.
Okay, I can take over now.
It's George Lucas, don't worry.
Usually from a screenwriting perspective in the series, you have story A, story B, and sometimes C and D, depending how in depth the writers want to go. But so far we can say that story A is Mandalorian's hunt to be back as a Mandalorian. Story B is Grogu exploring his abilities and knowing what he will become. So there will be obviously intersection between story A and story B because they are together. But let's look at story A a little bit from the perspective as, why was he kicked out from being a Mandalorian? Because when he first met other Mandalorians in the second season, they had their helmets out, right? And they said that, oh, he's keeping it on because he's one of the more religious ones. So for me, it doesn't seem like that was a big offense for him to get kicked out. So am I missing something?
So
sorry, I was just gonna say, I would argue that I think it is a big deal because that's the only, the only sect that he knows and that he grew up in. So it's kind of like when you kind of parallel to like some people who've only grown up like with a certain religious text, they're gonna only really follow that text as much as possible. And it's kind of hard to get them out of that funk, even if they see other people who are practicing it differently. And I think that kind of speaks to our world too. So I think for him, it's really important because remember, he was taken as a kid. So he has all of his youth, his young adult life in this sector. So it's going to be very difficult for him to just dismiss that as something that's not as important. I would think because he's just so already ingrained in the ideology and he just can't escape that. And I think part of what Grogu is, I mean, Grogu kind of took him out of that. He took off his helmet, he didn't take it off for anybody. He took it off for his son, so so I think that shows a change in that, but I think he's still trying to figure out who he is. And I think part of this is going to be what's going to take him to figure out who he wants to be.
It's almost kind of reminiscent of the Jedi, in that they don't want to have attachments or these familial relationships. But if the time comes when they fall in love with someone, it often, I mean, not often, but like sometimes they do betray the Jedi, their Jedi code, and take up a family. And like love isn't this horrible thing. And so it's not really surprising when this person who follows a very strict sect code, it betrays it for something Helium saying he has love for. I think I mean actually I don't think I know he was, when he was found as a child by Mandalorians, he was actually found by Death Watch. Again, if you look at their mark on their arms, they had the Death Watch mark, and they were like super assassin, like top tier killer Mandalorians. But they took their helmets off. They were a part of that new Mandalorian culture where they didn't really care about that old armor, the old traditions. So like I'm curious as to how he got tied up in that. And that's the answer to your question. That's why he was kicked out. He's not kicked out of being a Mandalorian as like a race or as a culture. He's kicked out of that specific sect of that high strung culture. All the people who don't take their helmets off, like she's like, you're no longer a Mandalorian. But like Bo-Katan and them actively took their helmets off immediately. And they were, I mean, they don't care about that. That's not important to them, but they're Mandalorians for sure. So I mean, it's
basically the Mandalorian, when he eats, he just keeps his helmet on and like slides the food under.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Oh my god! Wow, it's a lot.
It's silly. A lot of Mandalorian helmets have like feeder tubes for hydration, so they can just keep hydrated throughout their helmet trip.
All right.
Insanity.
Anything else y'all want to talk about?
Yeah. I think Eddie brought it up in the beginning about how we don't really know what his status is in Mandalore. Like, is he going to be the ruler? Is he going to be the new Mandalore? Because he is technically the owner of the Darksaber. So, according to their tradition. But again, even Bo-Katan follows that tradition, right? Yeah. She doesn't care about the helmets, but like, oh no, the Darksaber, that's something she cares about. I think that the way Grogu is waking up Din from this deep cultural things he has ingrained, I think that Din could potentially wake up a lot of other Mandalorians from something that holds them back as a culture. Maybe, just maybe. We don't hear about the Mandalorians in the new movies, so we don't know what they're doing. So
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just like agreeing. I think that's gonna be the case, and I think it's gonna be a misdirection of like who the quote unquote like villain is gonna be, because at this point you imagine that's gonna be him versus like Bo-Katan.
Yeah, I mean, she is a terrorist, but yeah,
she is a terrorist, but she also like, but like, with terrorist ideologies, like they think that what they're doing is right. Yes. But she's also, I mean, she's kind of a neutral, as
neutral terrorist.
Yeah, like she's chaotic neutral, I think. Like if we're doing D&D references, but yeah, so we'll see. I think I'm interested in seeing how her evolution also kind of tracks.
So what motivates Bo-Katan as a character? What motivates her to do all these things?
I think she genuinely believes in what's best for Mandalore. I think she actively wants to see Mandalore thrive. I think that she doesn't believe her leaders, the people who are in charge are the people to do it though. In the Clone Wars, I mean, she's kind of validated in the Rebel series, because Darth Maul ends up taking control of Mandalore because he gets to control the Darksaber because he's a Sith monster and no one can defeat him in combat. So like she's kind of validated in when he takes control. I think that she sees herself as Mandalore because she recognizes that she would do a lot of good for that, but a lot of her actions have been less than honorable. She did stage a violent coup after all. So
It's true.
that resulted in the death of thousands of Mandalorians. So like, you know what I'm saying? It's war though. There is no one's really shot walking out with their hands clean.
That's true.
Luke force choked a Gamorrean to death. So,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean,
So is the Darksaber equivalent to leading or governing Mandalore, or basically?
yeah,
Yeah. It's like you can't rule Mandalore without the Darksaber.
and you can only do
And-
one through combat.
Yeah. So we're gonna see how that plays out because everybody knows that that's what the storyline is coming through. But like
Yeah.
I think that's all just a human misdirection.
Yes.
And there's gonna be some sort of new lore that's gonna show us. Well, actually,
Yeah, that's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for them to do a basilisk drop on Mandalore.
yeah,
It'd be cool.
yeah. I wonder if I wonder if we're actually gonna see Ahsoka in it. I feel like we
For
are.
sure. Yeah, for sure.
And if we are we gonna see Luke again? So questions
Yeah, I
there,
don't know.
like is Luke gonna be somehow involved? Is Ezra gonna make this crazy appearance?
Wow.
Because Ahsoka's coming right up after that.
Yeah, but I say, don't they have the actor for Ezra picked out already?
They do.
Yeah, they do. And
Yeah,
that's
so
going to be in the Ahsoka show.
Correct. So, yeah, there's a lot to play with. It's not just Mando, Grogu, and Bo-Katan. You got Ahsoka, you got Ezra, you got Luke. Luke is gonna be there or not, and trust me, I would totally milk Luke as much as possible.
Yes, well, of course. Yes,
yeah,
naturally.
even if it makes no sense.
I agree. I think Luke's one of those cards you kind of play like the oh, how can the heroes possibly get out of this situation? Oh, well, the answer is Luke Skywalker. Like cameo right quick, 10-minute cameo, save yourself the CGI budget. Fans are clapping like it's a dub.
I think it's part of the sort of the ask that fans have been asking for years is like where was Luke in between then and like Force Awakens and like I think they're sprinkling in little like slices of life of where Luke was, and we still want to see him in his badassery days, and I think there's so much meat to like or juice to squeeze out of, I should say, even better, like out of that sort of storyline because you don't know.
Yeah.
So how did y'all feel about Luke when you saw him in Boba Fett when it comes to basically the CGI and using a voiceover?
Oh,
I didn't like
better.
it.
It looked way better.
Okay.
I really liked it. Compared to, and like I still like Rogue One, the Carrie Fisher Rogue One for Leia. It looked good, but like very clearly
it was for like
CGI.
A moment though.
It was for a moment, exactly. It really it's like if that's the worst, if that's what I have to complain about, so be it. Like that's all I can complain about, fine.
I'm not
like that Luke CGI for Boba Fett was great.
I mean, okay, the CGI was good, but you'll notice that how they were avoiding as much as possible to show his face when he talks and try to put the angle on Grogu because it was clear they were struggling in it. It was obvious.
It's gotten way better. I think it's gonna get even better.
It's the uncanny valley. It's when we see an artificially created face or like an animatronic face, like we'll always recognize that it's not human. There's just something off.
Yeah.
And it's called the uncanny valley. It's an effect they're studying, trying to overcome for AI and things like that to make them more flesh with society or two flesh. You know what I'm saying? Then we can't tell them apart. So I think it's unavoidable to like look at these CGI faces and be like, oh, that's fine. Like Superman, I don't want to get off subject, but Superman's lip when it's CGI because he has the mustache, it looks horrific. But like I can't not look at it. I'm like, oh, your lip is just weird.
So distracting.
It's so distracting.
I have more. I don't know, Eddie, if you might have the answer to it, but why didn't they do it similar to what Avatar was doing?
Well,
so have an actor talk and then add the motion capture, I would say, to
it is a very deeply involved process, and it's also a lot more money. TV does not have the kind of money that features like an Avatar is like, what was it, like a 300-200 million dollar like movie, and
I mean,
that's
yeah,
just like 3 hours.
yeah.
You know, like it's way more like I need to get this through to people because they feel like it's such a simple thing to do, and it's not. It
Right.
takes a lot of work from the pre-production stages to the production stages and then to post.
Mhm.
And you can always say, well, yeah, you know, I see YouTubers, you know, do a way better job on so and so, like to a degree because they have like a certain slices of a scene,
Uh-huh.
but you know, they also probably spent a lot of time on that. They don't always reveal like how much time it took, what they did, what their method was, et cetera, et cetera. And then also you are going to have people, and you know, to Lucasfilm credit, they hired somebody who did really well on like they saw the cuts from like, you know, what using, I think when Luke returned to Mando 2, like there was this guy who did a really great YouTube video of him doing a better job, and to Lucasfilm credit, like, oh, let's hire you because we want people like that.
Yeah.
So they
Yes.
hired him, and that's the guy who did the face for Mando, or for that episode
Right,
in
looks so good.
Book of Boba Fett. So it's getting better, but also I think you also have to really appreciate the cost right now. It's still expensive. It's getting
Mhm.
cheaper over time, like all the motion capture stuff, and then also it's like, for instance, like what they did with The Irishman. You know, they used like the infrared dots because, you know, Martin Scorsese didn't want to have like these, want to see dots all over their face, and then have like cameras like capture their expressions right on, like on the, you know, like the way Avatar does. Instead they used 3 cameras. One was capturing like the infrared stuff, the other one was a cinema camera, and I forgot what the other one was, but like that was expensive as well. So it's expensive to do a really, really good job. And I think that's why it's really helpful when they do release like behind the scenes of how they did things,
Yeah.
because they make then fans, general fans, not even just, you know, like us who do filmmaking, like they think they can appreciate even more, like, oh, I see, this is actually a lot harder than it looks, and the
Yes.
time constraints and the amount of money. So
Yes.
um so I think we should always be critical, obviously, but I think we should also appreciate how much work and labor it goes into that. And people are working really hard under really tight budget constraints. And the VFX community is the one that is the most overworked and underpaid.
I'm
Underpaid. There it
sorry.
is. Underpaid. Say it. Say it out loud. So it's in the
Sorry.
universe. They're underworked. They're overworked. Underpaid. Say it.
Yep.
Pay our VX.
I
Pay
can
our
also
VX teams
explain why
more.
that happens if you'd like. So when you're talking about a VFX production house, is they bid on movies. You know, they bid, and I can probably get some of the details wrong, but they bid on movies. Like, so for instance, if like a Marvel, like, hey, we have like this sequence that we want to do, you know, the VFX company like, oh, okay, I think we can do that for like 5 or 10 million or $5 million or whatever. Like, Marvel's like, okay, great. But then that means that even if it goes over $5 million, you're still going to work the same amount of hours or more hours than what those $5 million can provide. So it's like,
Right.
so you're not, so they're still getting paid, but the manpower is like stays the same. They never expand it, you know. So it's a weird process. It's a weird process. Like it's all about the bidding of a certain, you know, movie, and then like there's a budget for it. But I think the bidding is like what kind of caps the budget. It's so confusing to me still, but yeah, they're just the most overworked and underpaid, in my opinion.
And it's not really something you learn in school, right? It's more like
No.
you need practical training, and
Right.
so you
I mean,
basically
maybe-
want.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the VFX people at USC or whatever maybe have better idea.
I mean, I know there's the introduction to visual effects class, which I have taken, but I think, are there any other classes at USC that work on such things?
I mean,
maybe like
took a-
editing. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah.
I took a VFX class, but it was there was no real mention of like the process. But to be fair, it was like a very specific kind of VFX class. So you know,
I think that's a entertainment technology field. The entire industry is like that. Whether it be game designers to VFX design teams to lighting artists for concerts. Like, Someone has to design all this stuff. And it's mad man hours, person hours, people hours, however you describe it. It's mad hours that goes into this. It's like it is a labor intensive field. It requires people to sit down behind a computer and put the hours in to make this thing happen. You can use all the programs you want to. You can use as many shortcuts as you want to, or pre-existing features or whatever. But like, someone has to sit down and do all this. And again, like Eddie said, like Avatar's budget is insane.
Yeah,
it is a CGI movie, so like everything is CGI related and fixed for. Like it's all accounted for. It's all planned out. So nothing really stands out. Like when the CGI is blurring between the like, there's so much CGI in the like real shots. Like it's designed that way. It's intentional. So it looks seamless. Whereas like Luke is a younger character, and again, you remember, I think we talked about this earlier, but like you're talking to fans, not here in this conversation, but to the TV show, to its viewers. These are fans who've been watching this for like 2 decades. They know he's an old guy now. Like Mark Hamill is an old person. We love him still, but he's like an older person. So it's not really surprising when we see like a younger actor portraying him, or like CGI on a character to make him look younger.
I also, when I think about it, Boba Fett is like the spin-off, so obviously they're not going to focus a lot on it or throw a lot of money. But when you look at Mandalorian, it's like $100 million an episode. I think like obviously the CGI in it is going to be much better than Boba Fett. So
it's not $100 million an episode.
No,
it's not.
That would be no.
That would be an insane.
That would be the most expensive project ever in the history of humankind. Like,
okay, wait, let me check. How much is it?
$100 million an episode. So you're gonna tell me it's like almost $1 billion?
Oh my god.
No. You know what was the most expensive show? That was Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah, yes.
Oh wait, the first season was $15 million an episode. Sorry.
That's about right.
See, there you go.
Yeah, 15 million.
So 100 million for the whole thing. Yeah, sorry.
Which makes sense though, like big budget. I also think that the reception of the Mandalorian seasons have been far greater than the reception of the Book of Boba Fett. I do think they're all kind of spinoffs. So
yeah,
it kind of all falls in the same boat. But I also think that they're all sequential. They're all happening back to back. So like to see Ahsoka at the end, it would be like, oh, this makes sense because this is about the time where she's an adult. Then you see Luke training Grogu, you're like, yeah, that makes sense because this is about the time when he's gone missing. Like we know he was training Jedi, but we don't know what school is. So like these things all kind of line up. And I think that's the real strength of this section in Star Wars media history, is like every show that comes out in this order can kind of do whatever they want to. They don't need to make a movie to tell us what happened here. Here's 17 shows. Get some popcorn. Like you're gonna watch all this stuff.
Also, when I look at Boba Fett, it started well, to be honest. I was liking it in the first couple of episodes, but midway I noticed that Boba Fett was talking too much and there was a lot of dialogues. I was like, okay, they changed the writer here. It's not Jon Favreau writing, and I was correct. It wasn't Jon Favreau.
Yes.
So
it was obvious.
I'm excited to have Jon Favreau writing again. So we'll see how it goes.
Yes. I think that the Book of Boba Fett suffered mostly from certain design choices. Like those biker gang kids, like that's the silliest, dumbest waste of my time. We don't have to talk about that. Like anytime they were shooting, they were like pulling spin moves to shoot. Oh, just not necessary. Just things we don't have to worry about. But I think we're about to get a series of a bunch of Mandalorians doing Mandalorian things. So expect every gunfight to be like pretty sick. This is not about to be 3 guys in a hallway shooting across from buckets. Like this is going to be people jumping out of jumping out of air vehicles, coming out of sewers, blowing up buildings, jetpacking around. Like Mandalorians have a crazy toolkit, and that's always the fun about writing Mandalorians and like having and reading about them is like, oh, what tools are you going to use to knock over somebody? Like a net, a flamethrower, some darts, like a Yoda, a baby Yoda. I'm going to throw a baby Yoda at you, and it's going to solve the problem. There you go. Craziest grenade. What do you have? A frag grenade?
A baby weapon of mass destruction there.
Before we wrap up, I want to talk about, we talked a lot about bringing characters in to the story. What do you all think of Fennec?
Oh, sick. Cool.
Yes.
Yeah. All about that.
I want Fennec, man. I was looking at the actress is 60 years old. I don't know how
She's a
she does it,
beast.
man.
She's
I don't
a
know how
beast.
she does it.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
She's
oh my God.
phenomenal. She was in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. She's a beast. That's how she does it. I love Finnick. I love when they introduce non-Force characters. And it's like, but when you hear about characters like, oh, Mandalorians, you automatically kind of associate them with that upper echelon power scale. But then you introduce like, oh, Imperial Sniper, and you're like, oh, is this like a cool strength person? Like, oh, could they beat Han Solo in a fight? Like
Right.
that's kind of where you start guessing. So I love when the characters like Finnick introduced because they're so useful. They're just useful. They're not really ever wrong. They're kind of like they offer an additional option, but like they're not really the wrong character. They're like the smart, functional, capable person. So that's always cool.
Eddie, you want to end this?
No, I mean I agree. I mean it's really nice to see non-Force users kind of just kick ass too. I mean, part of the whole reason why I love Andor, but that's a whole different conversation.
Yes.
And a whole different type of Star Wars show, obviously. But yeah, no, I'm excited for what's to come. I'm excited for kind of what tones of shows will show, like will evolve, and then also the future shows, after Andor, where that start to kind of amplify a certain kind of tone in Star Wars too. So it's going to be interesting to see what that's going to be like, and then in future shows and movies.
All right. Thank you so much, Eddie and Mac. And that's it for today. And we'll see. Maybe we have another discussion if some topic pops up before the series starts. And see y'all maybe at the first episode.